everyone, it's Annie, and today I am doing a long-awaited book tag that I've really been wanting to do. It is the Sapphic Book Tag created by Teresa from Sappho's Library. I'll have her channel linked down below. And this is her updated tag, so I'm so excited to do this. As you know, I really like reading Sapphic books, and my answers for all of these questions will, with the exception of one book, all be Sapphic. So this will be a great recommendation video for anyone wanting to get into some Sapphic reads. And the one outlier is still queer, so there's that. So let's get started. Question number 1 is CRIER'S WAR, a book with the enemies to lovers trope. So my pick for this is Gear Breakers by Zoe Hanamikita. I loved this book. It is a sci-fi Pacific Rim inspired story with Sapphic, obviously, rep, and Korean rep as well. And just look at this cover. Just so gorgeous. So the enemies to lover rep in this is that there are basically these giant robots called gods and people who pilot them. And that is her. And so she pilots them and she fights them. And they kind of come together and fall in love. And they hate each other at first, but it's so great. I love them so much and I can't wait for the sequel. Definitely read this if you haven't gotten the chance. It is so good. Question number 2 is inspired by The 7 Husbands of Evelyn Hugo, which I actually have not read. I know that's like a booktube crime, like I have not read that book. I haven't read any Taylor Jenkins Reid book actually, but this question is that I should recommend a book about a celebrity, either real or fictional. So if you see my latest vlog, you know that I love playing bad heroines so much, so much. And this story centers on 3 celebrities, I guess, but the biggest one is the actress, Harper, and I love her so much. She's just such a vibe and so great. I love her. And it involves filming a movie. The story of Plain Bad Heroines is that there was this boarding school where some mysterious deaths / murders occurred, and now, like 100 years later, these filmmakers are making a movie on the land of this boarding school about the murders that happened. And like the film is cursed and stuff like that. Things happen. So good. I love this so much. Seriously, it is so good. You need to read it. It's one of my new favorite books of all time. The next question is inspired by Girls of Paper and Fire, which is another one of my favorite books ever, but the question is a book with strong feminist themes. So this is the only non-Sapphic book that I'm going to recommend, but it involves polyrep, which is so cool. It is Iron Widow. I love it. And just like Gear Breakers, it is kind of Pacific Rim inspired, although in a very different way. It involves these characters who pilot these giant things. And basically the idea is that the men are the pilots that are like celebritized, if that's a word, and kind of revered by the people, but they use the energy of women co-pilots. They basically drain their energy and kill them each time they pilot these things. So the main character is trying to kill the guy who did this to her sister. It is very feminist, so if you're looking for a great sci-fi, super twisty ending with great characters and polyrep, I mean, how can you get any better than this, honestly? It's so good. The next prompt is inspired by These Witches Don't Burn, and it is a book with magic. Now, there are a lot of books that I could have chosen for this, but my favorite one has to be Summer of Salt. This is one of my favorite books that I've read this year. It is about this kind of matriarchal clan of witches who live on this tiny island where a mysterious bird roosts. And these witches have a motel that they host these bird watchers every year who come to watch this bird roost. And this book is so magical. It is amazing. I love the romance in this as well. And there's also a sisterly relationship that I really love, and strong feminist themes in this one too. I think in my review of this book on Goodreads, I said that I love this book so much that I wish I had written it myself. It is just so good. It is that amazing. Like, I just loved the vibes of this seaside close-knit community. It is so good. Please read it. The next question is inspired by You Should See Me in a Crown, and it is a book with royalty. So I'm going to recommend Rune Song by Julia Ember. I really like this book. It does not have that many great ratings on Goodreads, but it is enemies to lovers, kind of, and it is so good. Like, I think the magic system in this, it is a fantasy. The magic system in it is so creative. It has to do with singing, and I really like the main character and her love interest. I think their relationship was quite well developed, and it involves royalty. It's basically, you know, the standard story that this low-class person falls in love with, like, the princess or the equivalent of a princess, and it is so really good and very underrated. So I highly recommend checking this out if you're looking for a good dark-ish sapphic fantasy. The next question is for This Is How You Lose the Time War, which I do like that book quite a lot. The question is a book featuring star-crossed lovers. A Memory Called Empire, please. Yes, read this book. So good. I chose this book for this prompt because the main relationship is between a diplomat, and she comes to this all-powerful empire named Tixkalan, and her overseer kind of person in the Tixkalan empire, she falls in love with her. It's so good. So I guess they're kind of star-crossed because they come from two, not so much warring communities, but two communities that don't really get along so much, and they're trying to, like, better relations between them. It is so good, please. There is a central murder mystery in this as well. The characters are amazing. The world building is breathtaking. And this is my favorite book of all time. I have said that numerous times. I bet you're all tired of me talking about this book, but I will not stop because I was put on this earth to make everyone read this book. So please read this. If you take only one recommendation from this video, make it this one. The next question is for Cinderella is Dead, a book that retells or reimagines a classic story. I'm going to choose A Clash of Steel, which reimagines Treasure Island. I recently read this in one of my Sapphic reading vlogs. I really enjoyed this. I think the central romance was so good. It reimagines Treasure Island in a East Asian setting and kind of Southeast Asian setting. It involves a character from Vietnam, and also it involves the area of Canton, and it is so good. Like, there's a lot of found family vibes, really great, like, scene descriptions. The writing is beautiful, and again, the central romance is really well done. I really loved them. So please, if you're looking for just a really wholesome book, definitely check this out. Next is The Miseducation of Cameron Post, a book I would like to see adapted on the big screen. I'm going to choose The Once and Future Witches by Alex E. Harrow. I adore this book. It is a big one. It is a chunky book, but it is so good, and I just think this would make such a great movie. You know, instead of those movies with witches set in the 1920s by She Who Must Not Be Named, we can have this book instead, set in the 20s with suffragette witches. Like, please give me this instead. This would be such a great movie. I love it. I kind of want to reread this because I read it in January of this year, so I'm kind of wanting to reread it just because it was so good, and I never reread books. So please, this is about, if you don't know, it is quite famous, but it's about three sisters who kind of come together after kind of losing touch with each other, and they all have different lives, and one of them is Sapphic, and oh my god, it's so good. I love it so much. I loved all of the sisters. They're so different from each other, but they all really embody what it means to be a woman in such different ways that are so true. It's just so good. Please read it. The next question is how to make a wish, a book, a new release that you wish you had right now. So there are so many, and I'm in the midst of planning my anticipated 2022 release video, so definitely look for that soon. But the one I'm choosing for this prompt is Echo Sunset by Courtney Gold, who wrote The Dead in the Dark, which was a spooky sapphic book that I really enjoyed. This book, we don't know too much about it. It's a supernatural thriller that follows two sisters. I love books that follow sister relationships, you all know this. Who, after their mother dies, learns about her mysterious ties to an isolated Arizona town. When they decide to investigate, nothing and no one is who they seem, including the daughter of the town's enigmatic leader. Interesting. It sounds like there may be a cult involved, which makes me very excited to read this. And I really liked Courtney Gold. Dead in the Dark was her debut, so I'm excited to see what else she can do. The next question is The Priory of the Orange Tree, which I love, and it is a big chonker of a book, so I'm going to choose She Who Became the Sun by Shelley Parker Chan. I love this book. It's so good. I buddy read it with Britt from Slanted Spines, who is amazing and adorable, but this book was so good. It is described as the Song of Achilles with Mulan. So good. The central sapphic relationship is really good too. It is a historical fantasy that veers more on the historical side, so there's not too much fantastical elements in there, which I prefer. The characterization, though, is really top-notch in this book. Like, if you are a character-driven reader, you need to read this book. The characters are just so well developed. So good. The main character and the villain are just such perfect foils of each other. It is so well done. Definitely one of my favorite books I've read this year, and I cannot wait for more from Shelley Parker Chan. Next question is for Honey Girl, a tiny baby short book. So I'm going to pick Things Have Gotten Worse Since We Last Spoke, which I also read for a Sapphic reading vlog. It is a horror novella. Please don't read this if you are really grossed out easily. This book is gross and wild and takes a very strange and unexpected turn. Like, things go from 0 to 60 like that. It is absolutely wild. I can't really say much about it because it is like only 100 pages and anything I say will spoil you. But the premise is that there are these two women who meet on like a Craigslist type website. One of them is selling something and the other contacts her to buy it. And then they end up chatting online. That's all I have to tell you because it is really, it's not too much scary, but it's just so shocking and gross. So I do recommend this. I did really like it a lot. It was super captivating, really kept you on the edge of your seat, but definitely look up content warnings before you read it. Next is Saw Kill Girls, a spooky book. So I already talked about Courtney Gold, but I'm going to talk about The Dead in the Dark again because I really liked it. I don't remember if I gave it 3 or 4 stars, but it's about a 3.5 for me, which is not a bad rating. I really liked the vibes of this. It was super creepy, very spooky. It has like a really good small town, almost Twin Peaks kind of vibe, which I really liked. It was really creative. There were some things that I will chalk up to it being a debut, like the romance felt a little bit insta-lovey, but I did like the 2 central characters in it. I think it was definitely a successful read. If you're looking for a good spooky sapphic book, I think you should not overlook this. And like I said, I'm definitely wanting to read more by Courtney Gold, so that should be a good sign for this book. Next is The Midnight Lie, a book with an intoxicating romance. So this is a bit of a hard question for me because I don't like books generally that are just central on the romance. I like other things surrounding the romance. So I'm going to pick The Last True Poets of the Sea because, first of all, I loved this book so much. It's so good. And it's not really recommended a lot when people recommend sapphic books, and I don't understand why. It is so good. It's about this girl who has to move to a town, a small seaside town in Maine for the summer while her brother recovers from a suicide attempt back home in New York. And she falls in love with someone there. Her family actually founded this town, and it's called Lyric, Maine. This book is also based on Twelfth Night by Shakespeare, so it involves a shipwreck. And it is just really, really good. And I really did like the central romance a lot. I think it was really well done and very convincing. So definitely check this out if you want a book with immaculate small New England town vibes. Like, that is really, really good. And the main character was just super well crafted. I wouldn't say she's relatable to everyone, but I think she is a very good example of a character who maybe not is super well likable, but is still enjoyable to read about. So absolutely check this out because it is so good and I don't want people to overlook it. The next question is The Henna Wars, a book that explores a culture different from your own. So I'm going to pick Last Night at the Telegraph Club, which was so good. It was one of my most anticipated releases of this year and it did not disappoint. It is about a Chinese American girl who grows up in 1950 San Francisco during the Red Scare, so she's dealing with that. And she also is dealing with the fact that she's realizing her sexuality and it is not accepted by her family. So you learn so much about being Chinese American during this time, and it is frightening. Like, the author does not skimp on the details. It is frightening and makes you angry. It really does. And I learned so much from this book. It is just a superb book. It is, I literally have nothing bad to say about it. It is so, so good. And if you want a really, really great sapphic historical fiction, this is one of my biggest recommendations. Second to last question is the Falling in Love montage. Recommend a rom-com. I love the Falling in Love montage so much, but if I can't recommend that, I'll have to recommend She Drives Me Crazy, which I read for my first sapphic reading vlog. I love this book. It was way better than I expected it to be. I thought it was just going to be, you know, a cutesy YA kind of almost throwaway book, but it was so deep. Like, really, really good. It involves fake dating and enemies to lovers, which was awesome. The central romance was so good, and the two central characters were also really well-rounded. I love the cheerleader main character so much. She's so great. I just love this book. It was so heartwarming, funny at times, but also could be extremely serious. It deals with the topic of toxic relationships in a really sensitive and just overall well-done manner, and I loved it. I really enjoyed every minute of listening to this audiobook as well, and it was just really good. Okay, and the last question is to recommend a sapphic book of your choice, so I'm going to recommend The Stars and the Blackness Between Them. I love this book. You probably know that already if you've watched my channel a lot. This is one of the most gorgeous books that I have ever read. Definitely one of my favorite books of the year. It centers on a girl from Trinidad who is caught with her girlfriend, and her religious family sends her to live with her father, who is American. And there she meets another girl who has something going on that is quite sad. I don't want to give anything away, so I can't really say anything more than that. But it is just so amazing and so beautiful. Their relationship is really, really good, and this book will bring tears to your eyes, honestly. It is magical realism, but it's more so contemporary. Like, there's just a tiny smidge of magical realism in there, that really just sets it over the edge. It is so good. Beautiful writing, beautiful language, and it is dual POV. It is such a great book. This was recommended to me by Sarah from Novel Serendipity. I'll link her channel down below. I am so grateful that she recommended it because, oh man, I'm so glad I got to read this book. It was just such a treat through and through. Alright, and that is it for this Sapphic Book Tag. Thank you so much for watching, and let me know down below what your favorite Sapphic book is. I would love your recommendations as well. And thank you so much. If you liked this video, please like and subscribe to my channel, and I'll see you soon. Bye!